Dr. Rich McCormick, who, in addition to being a Republican member of Congress from Georgia's 7th Congressional District, is also a decorated veteran and an emergency room physician. So a lot of things to be able to discuss with him today. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on the program. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be with you today, especially on an important day where we're dealing with a lot of issues, not only in the budget with foreign relations. I mean, this is a
Yeah, talk to me about
week.
this. Talk to me about what we're hearing from the president. I mean, do you trust that Vladimir Putin is acting in good faith here to try to actually make a deal?
Well, like you, I don't trust Putin as far as I can throw him. The guy's been untrustworthy since the beginning of his career when he was head of KGB. People forget his beginnings, but he's not only talking about the way the USSR was before Russia was established independently again, but he actually quotes Peter the Great. He quotes Catherine the Great. He talks about, you cannot secure your borders except for by expanding them. That is old Russian Empire type rhetoric. And this guy is not to be trusted. I couldn't agree with you more. They're the only country in the world that will not sign a pact saying that they won't let AI control the deployment of nuclear weapons. They're not a good actors. Even China has agreed to do that. These guys have invaded Ukraine repeatedly, first in Crimea when Obama was president, now when the eastern portion of Ukraine when Biden was president. I agree with you, President Trump has been very good at foreign relations, much better than most people would think because he didn't have that kind of experience, but he has a great personality to deal with those sort of things.
Well, so do you think, though, that this is actually going to lead to a deal? I mean, I guess I'm concerned that Putin is going to say, yeah. And then when it comes to any sort of security guarantees, et cetera, that a potential deal falls apart. I mean, I'm hoping I'm wrong about that, by the way.
Well, it's a start, and realize the Russian people have significantly suffered. They've had 1 million casualties. They lost half their armor. It's been a meat grinder for them. It's been hard on their economy, really bad for the people. But they've had inflation. They've had a wreck of an economy. They're going to want this to get done. I think Putin's trying to find a way to save face, say what he got out of this. That's what dictators do. He's a dictator by definition. He doesn't have fair elections. But he'll get something out of this for sure.
All right, so I guess we'll have to see what happens there. That remains an open question. You wrote a recent op-ed piece, staying on the topic of foreign policy, called "Peace Through Strength: Why Trump's Middle East Strategy Works." I'm curious what makes you think it's already worked. Meaning, again, I think Trump may be in a better position to try and negotiate an end to the Israel-Hamas war than Biden was. But what makes you think it's working?
Well, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that the Houthis are severely crippled. Hamas has kind of come to a grind. We still don't have all the hostages released, but we're getting there. Hezbollah is largely in check right now. Iran's trying to play passive right now. That's all good stuff. However, the bad is that Iran still has an incredible amount of revenue. We haven't been really good at continuing our sanctions to the degree we could. I'd play hardball with these guys. They're deploying terrorism throughout the world, not just that region, but the entire world. They're arming bad guys to do terroristic activities against the United States and our allies all over the world. We have made multiple endeavors to get rid of their nuclear arms. What they do is they make a negotiation and they renege on it. That's what they typically do. They're not to be trusted either. But President Trump has been able to put a tremendous amount of leverage on these guys, isolate them. He's going to bring them to the table. We will have relative peace in that region, at least for the short term.
Let's stay on the topic of Iran, talking to Dr. Rich McCormick, Congressman from the 7th District in Georgia. I mean, there was a deal with the Iranians. I know that the Trump administration and many Republicans didn't like the deal, but it seemed to have been working in the sense that there were checks that indicated that Iran was not actively pursuing, or successfully, I guess I should say, pursuing a nuclear weapon. And that deal was thrown out. And now we're back in the position where we're trying to figure out how to prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon.
Well, let's be honest with each other, though. We know for a fact we made a deal and Iran continued to develop their nuclear weapons. We know how we got their centrifuges messed up by cyber And thank God we did. Otherwise, they would have nuclear weapons by now. This isn't because they decided, oh, we'll be the good guys. Thanks for the money. We're no longer going to develop nuclear weapons. We know for a fact they did not act in goodwill. This will ensure, hopefully, that we do have checks. It's open, it's transparent, and that we don't have to do something drastic to keep them from getting nuclear weapons.
It seemed to me that the checks were working as well as they can. I mean, I can't see how the checks are going to be more effective now. Let's assume that they come to the table, and let's assume they're scared, right? Let's assume that peace by strength, as you put it, is working in Iran. How are the checks going to be any different than they were under the previous deal?
Fully open. First of all, our intelligence community, thank God for them, because that's why we discovered their nuclear program before, when they agreed not to have a nuclear program. It wasn't working. Whatever we do this time has to be more open, more transparent. They have to be able to not have, just like Saddam Hussein. Remember, he agreed to something, then he denied access to their facilities all the time. That's what brought us to war, because we're not going to allow madmen, especially in a theocracy, to own nuclear weapons right next to Israel, which could start a world war.
Yeah, because I guess I was under the impression that it was that the sense in this country was that it was mostly working with regard to preventing Iran from building a new nuclear weapon when the Iran deal was on the table. And when that Iran deal went off the table, that they began actively pursuing their nuclear goals again, no?
No, quite frankly, they're never going to shelf that. And they may not even this time, quite frankly. I would love to destabilize that government. I'd love to punish them into submission because they're bad for the people. They're radical. They've exported terrorism every turn. As a matter of fact, a part of this deal, they should be required to, if any of their weapons are caught outside of their country, any of their production is caught outside of their country, severe sanctions, severe punitive damages they should be paying fines to the world, because every time they export weapons and terrorism and their horrible theocracy and their ideology around the world, they should be punished. And we should not play softball with the guys. They do not understand pacifism at all.
I want to come back to foreign policy, but obviously, you are an emergency room physician, and so I really want to ask you about the diagnosis of President Biden. What do you make of this? How serious is it? And do you think this is something that they necessarily would have known earlier?
Well, first of all, prayers to him and his family. Good likelihood, about 70-80% chance he will not be alive in 5 years from now. I mean, statistically, he's 82 years now. He's in his elder years. Once you get past 80, you become very frail. He has metastatic disease, prostate cancer that's most likely poorly differentiated. What that means is probably didn't show up on this PSA screen, which is basically a biomarker for prostate cancer that's more typical, less aggressive. This is an aggressive form of cancer that's not very easily curable. I know you can talk about how tough people are, but you can see how frail he is. We can see how much he's deteriorated in the last 5 years. The fact is, he probably shouldn't have run for president last time. They didn't have a better candidate, more unifying candidate. He had obviously missed a beat when it came to his mental facilities, even when he was running the first time. To have him run a second time was disingenuous, if not dishonest. They had to have known he had something wrong with him by that time. He probably had symptoms during this run-up of urinary, of basically not being able to urinate properly. And I'm sure on a physical that he should have had at 80 years old, that would have been discovered, given as aggressive as this cancer is.
And when you say that his prognosis would be 5 years, 78% chance that would be under 5 years, is that based on the diagnosis? You don't just mean just based on his age. You mean age combined with diagnosis?
Well, diagnosis, period. But given his age, probably even worse, quite frankly. Once it's metastatic and it's poorly differentiated, it's very hard to treat. It's all over your body. Any metastatic disease, when it comes to cancer, is very hard to treat. This one's poorly differentiated. In other words, we don't know exactly how to treat it, which gives him even a worse prognosis. And then add in his age, it's just not a good thing.
Well, look, it seems that these days, one area where Republicans and Democrats seem to agree is that Joe Biden shouldn't have run for re-election. Look, I was yelling and screaming about it for years. Had Dean Phillips on my show time and again talking about it, but the Democrats didn't want to listen. But then again, look, I was having people on my show talking about Nikki Haley. So as a political moderate, I was looking for the Haleys and Dean Phillipses of this world, and I lost on both fronts. So let me ask you another question about the president. There's an article today in the Wall Street Journal that's titled "Breaking Down Trump's Entanglements with Crypto." At a recent auction, Trump's cryptocurrency led to bidders bidding it for $150 million for his meme coin. The top 220 bidders get to go to a private gala at his golf course. The top 25 receive even more exclusive access to him. The profits go in part to Donald Trump, both when the value of the coin goes up, and there are also transaction costs. According to recent estimates, the Trump family and its partners have made like $320 million in trading fees alone since the president's meme coin launched. You okay with all this?
You know, it's funny. At least it's an honest conversation this time. Before, when people are selling artwork from a son of a certain president for exorbitant amounts, it was considered not really an issue, and I'm not sure why. But I think maybe it needs to be addressed. I look at the strict conversation about what we get compensated for as congressmen and as senators, and the conflict of interest, the disclosure we have to do every year to make sure we don't have a conflict of interest. The presidency has much more liberal policies, and that's something maybe we as a Congress take a look at. The problem is the governing power. When they're in power, and this is where the REINS Act, which will not be part of this big beautiful bill most likely, which keeps executive privilege in check. Unfortunately, when you're in charge, it's great to have liberal policies towards your own power. But when you're not, of course, you want to have checks and balances more.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you're in power is not the time when you act on limiting power. And that's always been a problem. Our Constitution was set up to do that by design. It was supposed to empower the people, by the way, over a government, not vice versa. I've been pro limiting presidential powers, keeping us in check. I don't think Congress should make as little as we do. I think we should make more, quite frankly. I think we should be very accountable. But quite frankly, most of us who are in the middle class have to take a pay cut to be in Congress. The people who are very poor get a pay raise. The people who are very rich don't care. But those people that you want serving in Congress get punished by being here. I think we have to have a fair evaluation of where we're at in Congress and the presidency and everything else like that, and make sure that people are happy with how we're prosecuting these things, much to your point.
Talking to Dr. Rich McCormick, Congressman from Georgia. But just one follow-up on that. I mean, you're saying that, we may have to look into that. I mean, it seems to me like you definitely have to look into it, right? I mean, it seems like it's sort of unambiguous about the potential risks. I mean, in addition to the $400 million jet, I mean, it all sort of lumps together, right? Trump is in the Middle East visiting 3 countries where he's got major financial interests. And it's not just theoretical, right? It's not just, well, maybe. We're actually seeing the investments coming from these areas into Trump family businesses, and the Trump family being rewarded in a major way. I mean, I would think that, that in and of itself would be something where you and other of the sort of straight shooting members of Congress would be saying, we need an investigation into this.
Well, it's not an investigation. It's wide open. It's transparency. It's not a matter of if it's happening or not. That's where the investigation would come. We know it's happening. The question is it legal? I don't think it's illegal. If it's illegal, it'll be prosecuted because nobody's hiding anything. The question is, should it be illegal? That's the question that you're asking.
Well, look, yes, a lot of it is in the open. But for example, the only reason we knew about the $400 million jet was because of a media report, right?
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have been able to hide a $400 million jet the president's riding around in. Let's be honest about this. That's a silly sauce, right?
Eventually.
I'm going to hide a plane that I'm flying around in that I just spent hundreds of millions of dollars prepping for the president, and then I'm going to put it in the presidential library. Nobody will find out about it.
Right. Eventually. That's true. That's true. That eventually it would have become public. But for now, the only reason we know about it is because of a media report. But
well, to be fair, though, all those dealings at the president's family that were all pardoned, by the way, for the first time ever, a president's family, and for things they hadn't even been accused of, which has never been done before. Also,
look, I was very critical,
except for by investigation, and that wasn't transparent. That was hidden. we had to dig that out. So totally different application
So do you? So
justice.
do you? The more important issue is whether we know about it is more important than the underlying conduct
Yeah,
itself.
because you can't deal with it if you don't know about it. Now, if we know
Well,
about it, now we can actually have the people weigh in and say, what laws do we want to have as a government, as a reflection of the people? What accountability we want to have? That's a great conversation. I'm willing to have that all day long. At least it's out there in the open. You can see he's actually very open about, hey, look, I have a Bitcoin. I have this and that. I have the next thing. You can see that on advertisements. That's not hidden.
yeah, I guess the part that's still hidden is what exact influence these Middle Eastern countries are having on policy, right? We don't know. We can't know exactly what the conversations are going on behind closed doors. Are there quid pro quos, et cetera? Those are questions we don't know the answer to, and that would require an investigation.
That's why it's really important to have the president working with Senate and Congress when it comes to passing bills rather than executive privilege when it comes to, then you can't have quid pro quo for one person. You have to have the checks and balances of the Senate and the House. That's where the real people's representation lies, and that's where it always should be. That's why I think the REINS Act or something similar, maybe even better, should actually be executed in a standalone bill rather than relying on this one bill that we're trying to pass right now. We're going to have a lot of work to do. And don't forget Social Security and Medicare, which cannot be taken care of this bill either.
But let me ask you about the bill. It seems like it's in, what would you say, decent to good shape in the House right now to pass?
It's in good shape. We still have. I'm on a chain with about 32 members that wrote a bill or wrote a letter to the speaker about what we wanted. I don't want to move the goalposts on the speaker once we get what we want and say, but I want this too. But at the same time, I don't want a 10-year plan that tells me what we're going to start saving in 4 years. That's not an honest conversation either. And a lot of these things are provisions that will not get enacted until we're two Congresses and a president away. That's not honest discussion. I hate these 10-year plans. Nobody has a 10-year plan that works. Give me a 1-year plan and we can have a discussion.
So what do you think is going to happen with it? I mean, it sounds like it's likely going to pass in the House, but then you got a number of Republican senators who have already voiced opposition to significant parts of it. So is this eventually going to get passed?
I think so. Once it passes the House and you got the president on its side and you got the will of the people saying, if you don't pass this, we lose our tax cuts. We lose our ability to execute this economy. We lose real savings when we just got downgraded as a currency for the second time in 2 years. This is no time to play around with politics. We're not going to get what we want. Everybody's going to have to compromise. There'll be a tremendous amount of pressure on 50, and that's all it takes is 50, not 54, but 50 senators to pass this bill.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the different the different interests, right, that different senators have. Are they from swing states? And therefore, are they from states that have high state taxes with regard to the SALT deductions? Are they? And so every senator, every member of Congress has a sort of their pet issues that they have to make sure. And when I say pet issues, I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean it. The reality is for their community, right? The people that you represent. You have people in your community who care about things that, Mike Lawler's community might not care about as much, and it makes it really hard to pass a budget.
And this is the interesting thing about this too. And I want everybody to really hone in on this idea that eventually there is this profiles and courage moment where you have to stand up as people in your community. Everybody cares about the deficit right now because we understand it's going to be catastrophic to our economy, the future of the United States, and to our children, which means we all have to make sacrifices, even in our own districts, in order to do what's right for this country, which we will all live and die by. Nobody can escape it. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or if you're in a swing state or an extremely red or blue state. It doesn't matter. When we all go down together, we have to stand up together against this deficit, against this debt, or we're done.
Yep.
And that's one thing that even Democrats now, all of a sudden I'm hearing that when you hear a Democrat say, man, we need to balance this budget, my gosh, you better pay attention. Something's going on.
Talking to Dr. Rich McCormick, Republican member of Congress from Georgia. All right, so one of my pet issues, I mentioned pet issues for members of Congress. I've always been very focused on the DOJ. When I hear about the DOJ targeting, investigating people like Chris Krebs, who's the former head of cybersecurity, because he basically wouldn't question the results of the 2020 election. That's scary to me. Is that scary to you?
We've seen it for a long time. I've always talked about this since before I was in office. I hate it when anybody gets targeted. And I mean it specifically, like when the IRS targeted religious people or agencies that or groups that gave to conservatives during Obama's. By the way, not one person got reprimanded or lost their job for doing that. How in the world does that happen? That's a scary thing. I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican. I don't want to see anybody targeted.
But this is different. This is he's being investigated for refusing to perpetuate a lie about the 2020 election.
But here's the cool thing for him. He's a public figure, and he's going to have this heard out in front of the public when they're discussing the law. If you're just some other organization that nobody's ever heard of, or you're a person who goes to a Catholic rally and you're pro-life, who's going to defend you? This isn't going to make news. You're just going to be in part of this. That's the scary thing, is you, not you, the reporter, the famous guy who has a podcast that I'm on now, becoming famous because I'm with you. This is about the little guy. I don't want to see the little guy be targeted because they're conservative or pro-life or even liberal. I don't care. I don't want anybody targeted for reasons that are unjust. And that government does that. That is communism.
So can we agree then that this is, in your words, communism?
No, I don't think so, because we've just talked about rhetoric so far. I haven't seen any prosecution. I haven't seen
there's an investigation. The DOJ is investigating.
There's investigations all the time. I've been audited. You can call that an investigation by the IRS. But it's not a prosecution. It's not a court case until it is.
But the guy's lost his job. He's had to give up his job because they withdrew his security clearance. I mean, actions have been taken against him just because he spoke the truth about the 2020 election.
So kind of like Ronnie Jackson get stripped from his rank without any prosecution and literally being cut in his pay. You want to talk about unfair, and that's a congressman.
Yeah,
a congressman who basically got punished by an administration who had a beef with him without any legal premise, did it through execution of the government without any checks and balances. That's way more worrisome.
So
at least this guy will have a day in court.
Yeah, but you're talking about a criminal prosecution. It's different. I mean, when you're
kind
talking
of like
about taking away someone's freedom, talking about like what?
Kind of like an impeachment?
No, that's not taking away someone's freedom.
It can.
No,
you can actually lose your presidency. There's a lot of vested in the presidency.
But you can't. Again, impeachment's a civil proceeding. I mean, a criminal proceeding is different, in my view. But it sounds like you agree that this is a terrible investigation, but you want to put it in context.
I don't mind the investigation. I really don't, because if there's something illegally done, I want to have it prosecuted. But if you prosecute somebody without finding good evidence, this is where a DA comes in. This is where this is where the attorney general comes in. This is where the big boys come in. And if you prosecute somebody without due cause, that is bad. I'll stand against that all day long. And I've seen it happen on both sides, by the way. And way more when the Democrats are in power than when the Republicans are in power.
I don't know.
That's what I've seen. I can actually make a list for it. I can submit it.
I created the list. I did a list of this already. We'll have to exchange lists, because I did a list during the Biden administration of every high-profile Republican and Democrat that was investigated and prosecuted, and there were more Democrats who this DOJ went after than Republicans, I was surprised to see the result, but it's something no one was talking about, and it's awakening when you realize that. But
and the Department of Justice is not allowed to do it. The IRS is culpable too. The FBI is culpable too. I'm
talking about the FBI, part of the DOJ. IRS slightly different, but
I just think that we've been having a lot of targeting in the past. Is never come out to any sort of reprimand. Nobody's lost their job over it. That kind of stuff needs to be checked right away. As a matter of fact, if you do that sort of thing and it proves to be unmerited, first of all, you should lose your job. Secondly, any administration, and I actually suggest a law on this, by the way. If you as a person are investigated by an agency, let's say your business, ATF, or somebody takes you to task and takes you to court, you lose that court case, you should have to pay for their court fees. And by the way, it comes out of your budget so that you never do it again, because you only have so much budget. You start shooting those down range and it comes out of a general pot, then you don't care how much you prosecute people. But if it comes out of your budget, you'll be much more judicious in who you're suing and harassing using the government's money.
Dr. Rich McCormick, I think the audience now realizes why you're so good at what you do. We appreciate you taking the time. This man is not just a congressman, but he is also a decorated veteran, also an emergency room physician. He is a guy who could have done a lot of things, and he is serving in Congress, and he is spending time with us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Have a great day. Semper Fidelis.
Thank you.